Here's kind of the big one when it comes to investors. You have to get very comfortable telling them this is not a good fit for them, right? When you're getting started, you have a tendency to go, give me the money. You're in, you're in. You're in, you're in. Yes, can't wait, right? If you bring on an investor that is a bad fit, bad investors will ruin good deals, and you have to avoid that at all costs. All right, so here's gonna be my intention for today. Number one, I asked yesterday who raises capital or uses investor capital for real estate investing. Can you guys give me a show of hands again, just so I know? Okay, so let's call it a quarter of the room. For everybody else, is everyone else investing in real estate? Okay, so out of this group, about half of you will eventually bring investors on, right? You always get to a point where you get so good at finding opportunity. And if you're an entrepreneur, not being able to go after opportunity is a kill shot. It rips into our spirit, right? So what I'm gonna hopefully encourage you who aren't there yet to give you guys some good tools so that you can skip the, what took me years to figure out how to raise capital. So I'm gonna kind of help you guys with some of the foundational stuff. For the people that currently have investors, we're gonna talk about how I'm using basically social media to scale your foundation. And then for everyone else, if you guys have maybe a mastermind or an educational platform and you aren't dealing with investors, what you're gonna hear is a lot of the tactics that I'm gonna talk about apply to traditional sales. Whenever you're raising money, you are selling. The unique thing about raising capital is it's the only thing you sell that is not actually solving a problem. It is the hardest thing on this planet to solve. Now, I'm sure there's some people that heard this because even when I say it, I hear it. Well, what about our money sitting in a savings account? It's just sitting there, it's losing, value to inflation. That is a pain point. Here's the challenge. If you do not invest money today and it sits in a savings account, 3 years from now, your life looks no different versus you investing in an investment. 3 years later, it still doesn't look different, right? We're solving a problem for the future. So it makes it very difficult to follow the traditional sales tactic, which is, what's your problem? Ask all the questions, right? Let them set you up and then give them the solution. You don't have that here. So what I want to encourage everyone who will never bring on investors, a lot of the things that I'm going to tell you will apply to your business and it will actually help you sell your product more, right? My story really quick, Rich kind of gave a quick flyby. Started off as a pro skateboarder. So I had a passion turn into a career. It was amazing. I then asked my, at that time, girlfriend, her father, if I could have his permission to marry her. He pressed me really, really hard, right? I thought it was gonna be smooth. He ripped into me and he started asking me questions like this: what comes after skateboarding? And my quick answer was, well, I've always followed this kind of idea that if I live off a little bit amount of my income and I get it invested, I'm gonna be good. But I was not financially free when I asked for his permission. So I said, I don't know, I'll probably start a business, right? He looked at me and said, what business? I was like, I don't know, what do you mean, what business? And he's like, well, I want you to think about that. And then he goes, how are you gonna learn how to build business? I was like, I don't know. How do you even know you're gonna be successful? And he asked me all these questions, right? So I walked away. Yes, he said yes. 2, I walked away and went, oh my gosh, I have to figure this out and I need to figure this out now. That led to me starting my first business, which was St. Archer. It was a craft brewery down in San Diego. I know a lot of people here are from San Diego. When we had the idea, we didn't have the money to start it, right? It was gonna cost us about $3 million to start. We got a little bit of financing, but we needed about $2.5 million to start it, money we didn't have. So I had to go out and raise money. I had no experience. So usually when you have no experience, who do you pitch to? Friends and family, right? So I hit everyone, my parents, her parents, aunts and uncles, friends, and we crowdfunded through a friends and family round to start that business. 3.5 years later, we ended up selling to Miller Coors. I went through the experience of selling the business to a corporation. I still would have done it if I could go back, but it's very difficult for a startup founder to pass the keys over to a corporation because even though they sell you on the idea that they're gonna do everything you were doing, just they're gonna be gasoline on the fire, it's unfortunately not the reality. So myself and my 2 partners lasted about a year. From there, I started my current business, which is a technical term, private equity real estate firm. My wife, what she mentioned to me yesterday was, a lot of people don't understand that. So what you should say is you bring investors into apartments and storage units that you build and manage the total investment. Also, 2 years ago, no, it's been 3 years. 3 years ago, I wanted to get involved in my city on the local level, so I ran for city council. This year, I'm the vice mayor or the mayor pro tem. Starting January of next year, I'll serve a year term as mayor of Thousand Oaks. We have 4 children with our 5th on the way. And next summer, we'll have been married 16 years. So that's a quick snapshot of what we're doing. That's right. All right, number one, when you're raising money from investors, it's the same exact strategy when you're trying to figure out how to sell a product. You need to know your avatar, right? Not all money is the same. We heard that multiple times today, right? 2, different life stages have different goals, right? You need to be really clear on who you're raising money from. Are you raising money from institutions? Are you raising money from retail investors? If you're raising money from retail investors, you need to figure out what age that they're at, what their pain points are, and reverse engineer your marketing so that you are attempting to solve the problem that they're not going to experience, right? Once you understand that, you typically need to start without social media, right? Social media is going to be a tool that you apply once you know how to raise capital, right? Here is one of the big things that people do wrong. This has been the magic to everything I've ever done. Is I try not to sell a product, I try not to sell a service, right? So I try not to sell an investment even though I'm selling an investment. With our brewery, here's the story I'm going to tell you that hopefully will articulate this. When we had the idea to jump into the craft beer space, this was 2011, craft beer was exploding, right? So what we started recognizing was when we would go to house parties, the types of beer that people were bringing were starting to change, right? It was starting to move from the Paps and the Coronas and the easy drinks, and somebody would bring a Ballast Point, or somebody would bring a Racer 5, and you started seeing that percentage increase. So we saw a growing industry that we wanted to tap into. When we started doing our due diligence to try to find out what would make us different, what we noticed was a basically typical progression that got people to big scale breweries, which was they had an interest in beer, they then bought a home brewing system, they brewed it in their garage, they showed their friends, they got a little bit of demand, they then bought a storage unit, started brewing beer out of the storage unit, then into an industrial, and then they started growing, right? What's the problem with that? That means the entirety of this industry was born out of brewers. These are operators for the real estate world, right? So good operators knew nothing about marketing. So our whole idea was, okay, if everyone is selling the liquid, right? Everyone is selling a unique product. How could we take a growing industry that was becoming saturated, so red ocean, and what idea could we introduce to the market that would move us into blue ocean, right? Doing business and competing with ourselves. And here was our idea. And once we discovered this became the roadmap for everything I've ever done and hopefully will continue to do. Number one, what are we selling? We weren't selling beer. Our idea is we were going to sell California through the lens that we saw it, right? How I saw California: surf, skate, snow, music, art, culture, right? So all of our marketing was not beer. It was telling stories amongst all our ambassadors who were our investors on their story growing up in our state, right? So Paul Rodriguez, I mentioned him yesterday or the day before on the panel. Paul Rodriguez, Hispanic kid that grew up in the Valley, right? Single mom, learned how to skateboard, became great, had this view of California as a basically skateboarding paradise, right? Told his story. The only mention of our beer was at the very beginning for 2 seconds that said presented by St. Archer. Everything else was the story, right? When we launched, the amount of backlash that we got in the industry was great, right? You guys are fake. You guys aren't real brewers. This is a Ponzi, all the things that you would imagine, right? We knew that we had a leg up because what started happening? People that saw California the way we did drank our beer. And when they drank our beer, they resonated with our state, right? So the product just became the tool to sell our vision. What ended up happening? A year into business, everybody started looking around and going, how are these kids growing so fast? We're the fastest growing brewery in California. Myself, my 2 partners, 0 business experience, right? 2 years later, the breweries that were competitors of ours started looking around going, how are they doing this, right? By year 3, everybody started copying us. So that is the typical evolution, right? When you're early, people think you're crazy. At year 2, they start asking questions. At year 3, they start copying. That is the place you want to be, right? If you're just getting started, though, here's one of the biggest challenges you're going to have. Who's going to give you the most pushback in the beginning? The people you care about. This is the biggest challenge, right? When you start doing something different, your parents, your brothers or sisters, your friend group, they want to protect you. They don't want you to do anything that is too risky because they don't want to see you get hurt. Also, there might be some potential jealousy issues with there. Either way, you are going to get backlash from the people that care about you. That is the hardest point, right? What I want to encourage everybody to basically go out and do, when you start really looking for opportunity, remember, opportunity is not where everyone else is. It's where no one is. And that is a very isolating place to be, but be strong in your convictions. Keep moving forward. One of the coolest things that happens after that is when everybody starts jumping in and all of a sudden you're like, okay, crap, I've got to go do that again, right? You got to constantly get in that kind of I'm here and no one else is, right? What that looks like for me today, for our company, when we're speaking to investors, I spend very little time talking about the deal itself. I try to only talk about the financial models for about 5 minutes. The reason being, you only have so long to talk numbers, right? Imagine if I was sitting up here with you guys and going, all right, so you're going to build and your cost per unit is going to be $500,000 and your untrended unlevered yield on cost is 7%. Your LTC is 60%, right? I will get to a point where everybody's going to leave or everybody's going to gloss over or everyone's going to start looking at their phone. So we try to tell a story that separates my investments from others, right? Here's the challenge. There's only so much you could do in real estate, right? We did get some great examples of unique ways to build Airbnbs or hospitality, right? What is going to happen? Over time, that's not going to be unique anymore. So you're constantly trying to find ways to position yourself as different. My whole thing, and Rich knows this because I've been on his podcast many times, I started investing heavily in Southern California, right? And I was doing it at a time where people were leaving our state because of the politics, investors were leaving our state because of the regulation, and we went from being a state where 20 years ago, we were top 3. Like, no one argued. California, Los Angeles, top 3 market, right? I started going around going, yeah, I invest in California, and about 50% of the people went, why? Why would you do that, right? And they started saying all the points that I agreed with. The regulation is brutal. Takes us 2.5 years to entitle, a year to build permits, 2 years to build, 5-year window, no cash coming in, right? Then you'll start adding in the rent control and the crazy politics and the people leaving. You can see why the people leaving, I totally agree with, right? Here's what I saw. If we have a growing population and we have a weather that no one can replicate, there will be demand. And if the regulation has become so difficult that people will not build here, what will be the outcome? The housing crisis. Now our state is in the greatest housing crisis our state's ever been in, and it is unique to other markets. So even though the investors fleeing, I believe, are correct in going to other states where money flows easily, I started seeing an opportunity in our state that I thought others were missing. And so my whole thesis was this: if I can build apartment buildings in the most difficult market to build, and we have a housing crisis, what happens to my apartments? Do rents go up or do rents go down? Rents go up. If rents go up and supply isn't being added, what happens to cap rates? Cap rates compress, which means values go up. And so when did I do your podcast for the first time? 2 years ago? 2.5 years ago. 2017, I was like a lone wolf. Everyone's like, this kid is crazy, right? When I started doing your podcast, it was about 90-10 blowback, right? 10% were like, I like the idea. 90% were like, you're crazy. Over this last year, you're starting to see a shift now, right? Why? Because a lot of the markets that people were putting dollars into, where it was easy to build, they built. What happens when too much building happens? It saturates. When it saturates, you have to reduce rents so that you can get your occupancy up. All of a sudden, you have a correction and prices come down. So what we're seeing it's a lot of my friends, a lot of the buildings that they built, cash dividends have either come to a halt and they're delaying them or they've been reduced. Values are down. That is not what we're seeing in our portfolio. We still are not only increasing our rents per year, our pro formas have a pretty conservative rent growth, but we're able to forecast that because our supply is still so constrained. So I start with the story and the mission, right? This is what we're doing. I create a contrarian buy-in. And here's kind of the big one when it comes to investors. You have to get very comfortable telling them this is not a good fit for them, right? When you're getting started, you have a tendency to go, give me the money. You're in, you're in. You're in, you're in. Yes, can't wait, right? If you bring on an investor that is a bad fit, bad investors will ruin good deals, and you have to avoid that at all costs. Make sense? So you tell the story first. Number two, here we go into now the challenge of raising capital. What do you think is the biggest repellent of investors? Like, if I had one type of personality trait, what do you think that would be to cause every investor to run for the hills? Anybody have an idea? Bingo, right? Neediness will scare an investor so quick, right? So here becomes the challenge. When you're buying real estate, you put a deal under contract, right? Once the deal's under contract, the clock starts ticking. When the clock starts ticking, you need your capital, or you are going to lose your earnest, and you're trying to line up your bank financing at the same time. When you're raising money, typically the majority of the money does not come first. It comes kind of at the halfway point, and then everybody wants to get in at the end. So it starts dumping at the end, right? Now, you have to fight something inside, which is you have money on the line, you have reputation on the line. And before you know it, you're starting to get desperate. Hey, dude, you told me there was interest. Where are you at? I'm closing. What's going on? You're gone. You're not investing with me, right? So you have to fight a lot of the inner desires that are honestly valuable, validated. But if that comes out, they will leave. So here's basically the dynamic of raising capital. It's like a chess match, right? When an investor says something, you have to respond in a way that forces you to have the alpha position, right? If you do not have the alpha position, you will not raise capital. We have a lot of alphas in here. You guys are great. You look like an alpha to me, right? That's going to come natural, okay? If you're not, this is going to be a skill set that you're going to have to learn. Because, and if you take away anything from me, I want this to be it. When it comes to raising capital, the magic is in the follow-up. Everything happens in the follow-up, right? So you can be a great person who pitches. Like for me, naturally, it's easy for me to pitch. Like I have fun doing that. I'll leave the call going, nailed that, right? That's not when you close people. Everything is done after that, right? So here's what happens. I'm going to tell you about an investment, right? I'm going to tell you my story. I'm going to get you bought in, right? And I'm going to hang up the phone with you. Do you think you're going to go look at the deck I sent you? 70 to 80% will not, right? Most people will not spend time in the deal. So your next touch point is everything. You cannot say things like, hey, calling to see if you checked out the deal. What do you think? Cannot do that, right? Your follow-up always has to be adding value and attempting to create momentum, right? Adding value, creating momentum. Do we have Bethany in the audience still? Okay, Bethany, and she's going to be my counsel on this one. Here's the game that capital raisers have to play, though. You cannot sell something that doesn't exist, right? Everybody watching right now what's going on with Ty Lopez, right? You have to be very careful that you are not creating a false scenario of something that is not there, right? Somebody says how much capital's in, and you've got 100 grand, and you're raising $1 million, right? You cannot say I've got 900 grand, I'm closing next week, you better get in, right? The SEC does not like any of this. More importantly, the SEC does not like social media. They don't like what they're seeing with influencers. So what I'm about to tell you on the back end of how to add social media to put gasoline on your pitches, you have to be very, very careful to do this right, okay? The other dynamic, and now you're gonna go, why is he telling us this? We're never gonna raise capital. If a deal goes wrong, right, you do run the risk of a lawsuit. Whenever you have investors, you do run that risk. This is what we've found. Communication to investors is everything. So if you have a problem, if they feel like they're in the know, you are gonna be okay, broadly speaking. Here's the most realistic example of this happening in my life. I have a project in the city of Ventura, right? The city of Ventura, I think, is one of the greatest markets to invest in because they have a community that has not allowed developers in for 20 plus years, right? They had a city council that was elected by the residents, and by and large, they were elected to say no to all real estate. One thing that happened in our state was our governor, just put it out there so you guys know, I do not like our governor. I think he's a horrible operator, right? He did create something, though, that put more power into the builders, which was he removed the ability for city council to say no to deals, right? What that looks like on the policy level is he forced cities to add X amount of units based on their city that had to be introduced over a certain timeline. The last one was 21 to 29, right? When he said, City of Ventura, you have to put 6,000 units online, right? Typically, a city council will go, cool, Gavin, and not do anything. He created a program that if a city doesn't put these units into their general plan and those numbers don't get approved by the state, builders can now go around the city and build with a state program that is way more, let's call it liberal or progressive than what the city allows. That forced cities to say, okay, we will put these units on. Ventura was forced to do it, but their residents are still very much NIMBYs, right? Not in my backyard. So I have a project there. They don't like it. I'm getting a lot of backlash, right? We're doing a subterranean parking lot. It's got about 70 parking spaces below ground. It'll be a 4-story, about a 90-unit apartment, right? 4 months ago, we have a sinkhole on our property, right? Our neighbor's property drops about 15 feet. 3 cars fall in it. It goes viral. LA Times, Santa Barbara Times, Fox, every single news network picked this up. And what do you think their headlines were? Greedy developer ruins small business, right? Influencer tried to build, built too fast. This is the outcome, okay? And Bethany's gonna co-sign here. What do you think my legal counsel told me I could say? I couldn't say anything. I could not defend it at all, right? I had investors calling me because they started seeing all this news break on the headlines. So this is what we did. Number one, I did an emergency team meeting with my entire staff and presented this idea. With development, with business, we know that the whole game is solving problems, right? This is our opportunity to show our investors how we solve problems. I believe that if we do this right, we will get greater buy-in from this investor group than if everything went exactly according to plan. So we sent out an email. Day one, this is what's going on. We're gonna go through the due diligence phase. We're gonna figure out how to remedy it, and we're going to remedy it. We started doing updates way more consistent on this project so that they were able to feel like they were up to date with the approach we were taking. Fast forward to today, our last investor communication was, we just applied or just put our approvals in with the city to start remediation. We believe it's gonna take us about 3 weeks to remediate. This is gonna be the cost. This is gonna be the financial impact, right? How you do this part is everything. So now we will build it. We will hopefully have a successful investment. It still looks like we're going to have a really successful investment, but if it underperforms, my belief is those investors are gonna do another deal with us, another one after that, and one after that. So that part of the game is very, very important. Make sense? Okay, here is a strategy that is very, very overlooked when it comes to raising capital. Same thing is at play if you have a community, if you have a consumer. Rich does this very, very well. Retention of existing customer or retention of existing investor, right? Think of every business out there. Who's got a phone service? AT&T, Verizon, right? One of the big ones. What are they constantly doing? They're offering better terms and better deals to new clients. And if you're existing with them, doesn't it feel like they just don't care about us, right? The same challenge is at play with current investors. You get them in, they say yes, and you move over and try to get new investors, right? So some little things that go a long way. Number one, knowing people's names. This is what you are absolutely phenomenal at, right? When you see somebody, Johnny, Thank you for investing with me. How's your wife, Melissa, doing? I'm so thankful for you, right? Rich, just so you guys know how this whole thing came about. I have a pregnant wife. I have a busy business. I have a busy schedule. Rich goes, hey, can you come to Tulum and speak to the audience? Before I could even give him pushback, he goes, and I would love to take Jen with you. Because he knew I had a pregnant wife and me bailing out for 4 days was probably going to be a tall ask, right? Every time I've seen this man, it's straight to Jen. Jen, how are you? How's the kids? How's everything? What can we do for you? That is a skill set that does not come naturally to me. It is so, so valuable. So if you're like him, step on the gas there. If you're like me, start working at improving that.
Hey guys, if you're looking to get into real estate investing, but you're like, hey, I don't have the time, but you want to participate in the passive income, the tax benefits, and the wealth building, my company, Summers Capital, partners with limited partners, people like yourself, and we go out and buy boutique hotels. We have a fund where we currently own 5 hotels, and we currently have a wait list for investors to participate with us. If you want to learn more to see if this is a fit for you, you can go to summerscapital.com/invest to inquire and get on our wait list and be notified next time we have an opportunity. Again, summerscapital.com/invest. Now back to the show.
Number 2, have things to do for your existing investor base. Some of the things that we started doing. I do a poker night once a month, 8 to 9 guys. Call my investors. Hey, you want to come to a poker night that I'm holding? Just the ask adds value, even if they can't make it. If they do come, do not talk business. Not one mention of our apartments, new apartments, performance, none of that. It is all about having fun with them. Right? We do an investor dinner. We follow the same guidelines. We want to invite our investors to hang out with us, build our community. We do not talk business. There's a lot of cool ways to do this. I was on a call last week, and we have a new offering that I think we talked about the other day, where we have removed the tag of having to be an accredited investor, and we've brought the minimum down to about $5,000. So now on my live calls, it went from maybe 50, 60 people on the call to now hundreds. Right? One of the persons asked, hey, I've always heard about these like little community things you're doing, these poker nights. Are you going to do a golf trip? Right? This guy didn't even care about the investment. He's like, yeah, the investment's cool. Are you going to do a golf trip for us? So find ways to have exciting opportunities or even little meetups. You do a quarterly meetup at your apartment, right? These are great tools to have awesome retention. Retention is valuable because if you have a client or an investor that's having a good experience, will they tell their friends? Absolutely. This is the easiest and most cost-efficient way to get new capital, right? Here's now the next step to it. You will get to a point where the capital runs out, right? You will get to a point where the deals you start doing go beyond your investor base. For me, just so you guys know, I now have about 700 investors. That represents almost $400 million, right? The deals that we are doing today are much larger than the deals we did 8, 9 years ago. So we do need to focus on new investors. This is why I started using social media. When we sold St. Archer, I went from having a massive exit, right? My investors made a lot of money. So I had a group of investors that looked at me and went, what's next? I didn't even have to pitch. What's next? There's the money. 2 years later, I started outgrowing the capital source. So then I started meeting with new investors. And I was so frustrated because I took the old school approach, right? Went to networking events, went to conferences, called people, sent text messages, and tried to schedule coffees and dinners. And I had a moment where I was doing about 5 to 6 lunches, dinners, or coffees per day. And I was exhausted. And also I'm looking around going, it's 2017, 2018. How am I still doing business this way? This is like the old school way of doing it. So I knew I wanted to create a more efficient path. My social media at this time, maybe I had 500,000 followers, and I was looking at creating a piece of content that took me an hour where 100,000 people were seeing it. But then on my day-to-day life, I'm spending, all of the day meeting with 6. I have to figure out how to pair this. And so over the last 5 years, I have learned a lot. And so if you are an investor right now and you're not using social media, this is going to be beneficial to you. If you're an investor that wants to bring on investor capital in the future, this will be beneficial to you. If you have a product or a service, this is going to be beneficial to you. This is how you use social media to do it. Number 1, you create the short form content that you guys have been hearing about all week long, right? create the long form content to build trust. There are multiple factors that will need to come into play so that you can actually close an investor, right? At the beginning, it's going to be all you. So 5 years ago, this is what it looked like. I created the content. Somebody had the ability to hit a link to get on a webinar with me. No, a Zoom call, one-on-one Zoom call. I would then pitch them. I would then be in charge of the follow-up, right? My follow-up looks like this. It's phone calls and text messages, but text messages are a big component of it. So if I pitched Rich today, right, sent you off, I'm going to send a follow-up text message to Rich on Monday. And I try to do it at properties. So I'm going to do a video of me at the property. It's going to be 60 seconds, right? And it's just going to be like this, right? Rich, I'm at the property. I had such a great time talking to you. I just want to show you what's going on, right? And I'll do a quick little flyby of the property, send it. There's no ask there. It's just meant to give a visual and a touch point, right? After Monday, I'm going to send him another text, probably Thursday. And it's going to be tied to some new information, right? Hey, Rich, just got off the phone with the lender. We got our term sheet signed. Looking forward to reconnecting with you. How's Monday look, right? Then on Monday, I'm going to start with some new value, and I'm going to try to position him to have a decision. That decision is either going to be, I need more information, or I'm ready to act. Here's another brilliant one that he gave me a couple years ago, right? No's give you time. Yeses give you money. Undecisive or maybes give you nothing. This is such a valuable tool to have, right? We think no's are bad. So we typically try to avoid no's because maybes aren't a no. Get out of that framework, right? Start being thankful for no's, be excited about yeses, and do everything in your power to get rid of the maybes. The maybes are bad news for us, right? So what I do for the maybes, I force action, right? If I send a text message and there's no response, I'm going to send in a secondary text message the next day. The third is going to be a kill shot for me, right? And is always going to be to maintain the alpha frame. Rich, I sent you 2 messages. I have not heard back. Are you serious about investing, or should I focus on my other investors, right? He's either going to respond and say, you know what, it's bad timing. Great, thank you, moving you to a no, but I'm going to keep you in my newsletters so that there's a constant drip. If you're a yes, great, we're new investors, new partners together. If they don't respond, I move them over to not interested. I don't spend any more time on them. So learning how to get maybes to a decision quickly is very, very important. Here's where you have to balance. It's very easy to come in too hot, right? Hey man, I pitched you twice. You haven't responded. What's going on? You have to avoid that, right? You have to maintain alpha, but you can't do it too heavy-handed. So try to be delicate, but firm. Make sense, everybody? Okay. Here's where we are today. Once I got to the point where I knew how to raise capital online, I had to start building out a team to do it, right? Here's one of the, I think, the biggest challenges with business for entrepreneurs. We're control freaks, right? We don't like giving control to others. And because we're so obsessive, we typically have a higher bar of success than somebody who's maybe not a founder, not, they're not comfortable with risk. They're looking for something a little bit more stable. What I found is 70% is the best threshold. If they can do 70% of the tasks that you can do, you delegate, right? 70% of the bar, not 100%. If you're somebody that just cannot let go of control, you're like, look, I hear you, Mike. I love the idea of scaling, but I just can't do it. What you have to get comfortable with is your business will have a ceiling. And if you're okay with that ceiling, then fine, that might be for you. But the big challenge you're gonna have is you will never create a business that runs without you, right? I love to say that we're entrepreneurs because we don't wanna be a slave to the boss. It is so easy for entrepreneurs to become a slave to their own business. That's almost worse for us, right? So if you're somebody that struggles with control, here's what I would recommend. Start doing a deep dive on yourself. It's not fun. It hurts. What you're gonna find is there's gonna be something that happened along the way that made us like this. Maybe it's a parent. Maybe it's something that happened when you were young. Real personal one for me. I hope you're okay with this one. I got my heart broken by a girl when I was young, right? I was dating her, she dumped me, and I hated that feeling. That one feeling changed the way I spoke to girls. right? Very closed off, very hard for me to allow them in, very hard for me to feel like I was opening up because opening up felt risk, right? My wife's gonna know this well. This was years of us figuring out how to live in a healthy marriage, right? Not saying you have girl problems, not saying, but usually control is because of something that happened with us. I would very much encourage you to do the deep dive, figure out what it is, and start working on moving forward so that you're not held back to a cap of value, a cap of resources, or really an enjoyment of life. Make sense? All right, here's another very, very valuable tool. Anybody single in the audience? Okay, some good ones. Anybody dating? Okay, here is maybe one of the most valuable pieces of advice I could give you. Your wife or your husband should be your greatest asset, right? So how do you achieve that? Number one, when you're dating, make sure that your morals align. This is one of the biggest factors when it comes to divorce, right? I know you guys know, why do we talk about marriage? Trust me, this is very important, right? Morals is a big one. Financial outlook actually becomes a very big second, right? If you guys are unaligned on how money works, how you spend, or bad behaviors, that has a tendency of pulling you guys apart as well, right? You want to have, one, a successful marriage. Number two, you want to have a partner that builds you up, right? I'm not saying it's easy. Sometimes my wife tells me things I don't want to hear. The challenge is she has a track record of being mostly right, okay? That is going to be very, very important for us, right? The second thing is make sure that your wife or your husband can very quickly articulate what you do, right? How many outings are I'm just going to say wives because I'm the husband, are our wives at, right? We have a friend who just did a little hat brand and they had a mom mixer, right? Mom mixer. They're going to go up to the girls and go, hey, what are you doing? How's your husband? What does he do? Make sure that your wife can very quickly articulate what you do, because that's a grassroots approach of getting your name out there to hopefully do business with them, right? Social media is the gas, but the foundation, if you don't have the foundation set right, all of the things that you do on social media will be irrelevant, right? Here's what the scale looks like now for my business. I had to get setters, right? I had to get people that were making the original touch point to qualify. The time or the speed that they call a lead is everything, right? So we have a goal. We want a new lead touch in the first 5 minutes. Took us time to get there. When we first started doing this, 24 hours was our average time. So you got to have a setter group. You can do that in-house or you can outsource it, right? All they are going to do is qualify the investor and schedule them to talk to your sales team, right? This is now once you can do it yourself. Once you have a sales team, right? If you're getting into investor land, they're going to pitch. They're not going to pitch like the principal, right? So you need to tell your sales team, do not try to close an investor first pitch, right? The second pitch is where you're going to connect them with a principal. The principal will close. So you will get to a point where you have your setters calling, you have your sales team getting them hot, manage all of the follow-up, you pull a principal in, you close, you have investors. Our sales cycle is typically 60 days on the social media side. And that's done through two parts, paid advertising and organic, right? Organic is the hottest audience, right? Everybody pretty much on Instagram? Is everybody using a tool, are they using ManyChat or something that will provide a link? Yeah. Okay, so here's how my organic works, right? All value, all trust build, my call to action is to leave a comment, invest, Omni, wealth, whatever you want it to be. That's going to trigger the link. The link is then going to fill into our system. We use a company called HubSpot as our CRM. That then is going to alert the sales team. The sales team is going to call. The organic followers are the easiest for them. So something my sales team is always telling me, give me more organic. They're the easiest ones to close. Why? Because you've built the trust, right? On the digital side, when it's paid, it takes a lot more touch points. So what we do, we have 4 funnels that we drive people in. It's typically all education. In those education emails, there's videos that drive them to our YouTube or our podcast. In that, there's call to actions. Then they go through the typical flow, right? So that's usually the 60-day sales cycle is paid advertising. On the organic, it's much quicker, right? So to bring this thing now full circle, everything you heard from everybody on how to use social media, apply it to raising capital when you get there. When you start raising capital, what's the thing you have to avoid? Desperation. Have to avoid that at all costs. If anybody's a reader, read the book Pitch Anything. It's a book by Orrin Claff. It's brilliant. It's going to talk to you all about framing, how to do your follow-up. But in today's world with AI, you can actually ask whatever language model you're using to help you craft a message in somebody's voice, right? Hey, how would I respond to this person? This was their email, and I like to respond like Alex Ramosi. It'll actually do a great job helping you position your responses the correct way, right? Last one here, you've heard a lot about AI, right? AI is going to be a disruptor. Now, for our industry, I think we're going to get way more productivity than we are disruption. Because, is anybody underwriting their own deals? Raise your hand if you underwrite your own deals. Okay, we will not be underwriting deals for much longer. We will get to a point where we put the address of the asset that we want to put in, market study will be done for us. So there's no more Collier's market studies. There's no more 4 days from our analysts to create the pro forma. It's going to spit it out like that. That is going to save us so much time. From a staffing standpoint, right? Big part of my accounting team most likely will not be here, okay? Where this makes an impact for us is on the social media side, which you guys have heard long and hard about. So here's going to be my one thing about the social media stuff. If everything you do is education, you are not creating a moat around yourself to create separation. You have to bring people into who you are. I didn't catch your name. Tyler G, right? So Tyler G special. You did catch it yesterday. Oh gosh. Now, for the rest of the time here, I want everybody to ask me what Tyler G's name is. It's locked now. Thank you for that. But
So I was gonna say, really, nobody knows what my last name is because even I can't even get it out.
Give it to me, G.
Gerskevich.
We're sticking to Tyler G. So Tyler G needs to get really good at bringing people into his life that AI cannot replicate, right? AI can replicate the way I talk about real estate. AI can replicate the way I talk about capitalism. AI cannot replicate my relationship with my wife, can't replicate my morals, can't replicate my children. Those are the things that will create the separation. So where we're all headed is going to be the correct balance of education, personal brand that cannot be replicated, and the hottest community you can have of people that want to do business with you. We touched on this the other day, right? You got to be comfortable being yourself, right? This is, we were talking about Charlie the other day. One of the greatest things Charlie actually gave me when it comes to social media is he mentioned that he tries to make social media and his real life as close of a comparison as possible, right? So how you are with your friends, how you talk, what you believe, try to get comfortable being that on social media. It's going to be difficult because most of us don't want division, right? Division isn't something that's fun, but the division actually is the separating factor to create a hot audience, right? Somebody told me this years ago. They gave Trump as the analogy to this. They were like, Trump is the greatest example of creating a group that loves him and a group that hates him, right? For us as people, we don't like the idea of people hating us, right? So we try to avoid that. But here's the thing. If somebody doesn't hate you, nobody loves you, right? So try as hard as you can. If you're like me and you have a hard time with that, be the closest version of yourself on social, right? So far, do you find any of that valuable? Is there anything that you're going to get today that you're going to be able to bring to your real life? Awesome. Good.